Jock Dalton had always chased freedom in wheels, through back roads, and now, into retirement. After years on the road as a stunt driver, he'd traded roaring engines for a slower pace in a cozy little neighborhood on the edge of Clearwater, Georgia. The listing promised peaceful mornings, friendly neighbors, and wide-open roads. He never saw the gate coming. His house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, lined with dogwoods and tidy lawns. The place looked ideal except for one thing. A gleaming steel gate, taller than a box truck, blocked the only entrance in and out. And behind that gate stood a woman in beige slacks, clipboard in hand, watching him like a security drone. She approached before he even turned off the ignition. "You're blocking the lane," she said sharply. Jax slid his sunglasses down just enough to make eye contact. "Didn't realize I was on a racetrack." "You're in Cedar Pines now," she replied, tapping her badge. "I'm Karen Whitmore, board president." He stepped down from the cab of his truck, no easy feat, considering the door was 7 feet off the ground. Liberty Beast, as he called it, stood tall on 66-inch tires, painted deep blue with red trim and twin exhaust stacks. Karen looked horrified. "Your vehicle won't clear the entrance sensors," she added. "You'll need to find an alternate method of transport for day-to-day use." Jox raised an eyebrow. "It's street legal, has plates, and she makes a fine first impression." She didn't smile. Instead, she handed him a glossy welcome packet and pointed at a clause underlined in red ink. "No oversized, lifted, or commercial-style vehicles may enter through the primary access gate." Jox took the packet and flipped through it, half listening. A neighbor across the street peeked from behind a curtain. Another one, a kid on a bike, stared at Liberty Beast like it was a spaceship. He asked Karen, "So where's the vote from?" "The residents about this gate." She frowned. "The board approved it." "You mean you approved it?" "That's how leadership works." He didn't reply. Instead, he rolled the truck forward slowly, testing the clearance. The arch above scraped lightly against the roof. Karen flinched. "You'll be getting a notice," she called out as he eased through. That night, Jox found a neon-colored violation envelope wedged under his windshield wiper somehow. He had no idea how anyone reached that high without a ladder. Inside, the fine was already typed, signed, and time-stamped. His offense, vehicle non-compliance, and risk of property damage to HOA gate. By morning, 2 more notices had arrived, one citing noise complaints, though he hadn't started the truck, and another warning him about repeated disregard for HOA structural guidelines. He wasn't the kind of guy to rattle easily, but this wasn't just bureaucracy, it was personal. On day 3, he went to the HOA office located inside the community clubhouse, where a dusty community piano sat untouched beside an oversized portrait of Karen. She was there already, filing papers and typing with stiff fingers. He asked for a copy of the full HOA charter. She paused, looked up, and smiled too sweetly. "Do you plan to read all 189 pages?" she asked. He nodded. "I like knowing what I'm up against." She leaned forward. "You're not just up against rules, you're up against tradition." He walked out. He noticed the gate behind him, a gentler now in his mind, like a symbol. It wasn't just about steel or hinges. It was about someone drawing a line and daring anyone to cross it. He looked back once. Karen stood in the office window, watching him with folded arms. Something told him that wasn't the last time he'd see that look, and deep down, he knew this quiet little street had just become his newest arena. Jox figured it'd stop after the first few fines, maybe a warning, a snarky email, even some passive-aggressive stares at the mailbox. But instead, it escalated. On his 5th morning at Cedar Pines, he stepped outside to find a folded stack of papers taped to the side mirror of Liberty Beast. Typed, dated, and underlined. It read like a manifesto. Compiled violations as of this week, it began. Under it, 10 separate citations, everything from excess tire width to visual obstruction of common aesthetic standards. The entire stack had Karen's initials in the corner. Jox stared at the papers, then looked around across the street. The same curtains twitched again. Someone else knew what was going on, but they weren't stepping in. Not yet. He took the stack inside, poured some coffee, and spread the notices across the kitchen table like cards in a poker hand. One phrase stood out across almost every page. "Failure to comply will result in further action." But they never said what further action meant. Later that day, he decided to pay the HOA meeting a visit, not to argue, not yet, but to understand just how deep this rabbit hole went. He arrived 10 minutes early and found the small meeting room already full, folding chairs, lemon water on the table, and Karen seated dead center at the front, like a judge in a courtroom. He recognized a few neighbors from the street. Most nodded politely. Some looked away. Karen began by tapping her clipboard. "We'll start tonight's agenda with community parking issues," she said. Then her eyes met his. Specifically, oversized vehicles that present safety concerns. A slideshow popped up. There she was, Liberty Beastin, full glossy color, parked in his driveway, multiple angles, even one from behind the privacy hedges. Jax raised a hand. "You taking pictures from people's backyards now?" Karen smiled. We conduct monitoring from public vantage points. From inside a bush, a chuckle escaped from someone near the back. Karen snapped her head toward the noise, but whoever laughed was already straight-faced again. Jock stood. Tell me something. Who voted on this gate? Who decided it should be this size, this type, or even built at all? Karen's smile faded. The board has discretionary authority under subsection. I didn't ask for the section. I asked for the vote. There was a pause. Then another board member, an older man with a thinning mustache, cleared his throat. Karen pushed it through during the emergency security upgrade motion last year. Another hand went up. Sarah Liu, a young mother from 2 streets over. My family got locked out last week. The gate froze again. It took 40 minutes to reset, Karen interrupted. That was a system glitch, not related to enforcement. Jocks nodded slowly. You're not managing a neighborhood. You're managing a moat. The room went quiet. After the meeting, Sarah caught up with him in the parking lot. She's been running it like this for years. Anyone who pushes back gets swarmed with fines or warned about compliance issues. She leaned in. But there's something else. That guy that's tied to her brother-in-law's company. No bids, no review. She just greenlit it. Jock, brow furrowed. That legal? Not really, Sarah said. But no one's ever pushed hard enough to check. Back home, Jocks opened his garage and pulled out a ladder. He climbed halfway up Liberty Beast, pulled a small camera from his pocket, and stuck it discreetly under the side mirror. From now on, everything stayed on record. The next morning, something new appeared in his yard. A fluorescent orange notice nailed to his mailbox post. No envelope, just a single line. Cease and desist operation of oversized vehicle within HOA perimeter. Effective immediately. It wasn't signed. JAX took it down, walked it inside, and taped it next to his collection of fines on the wall. His fridge was almost empty, but the notice wall was getting fuller by the day. He sat on the porch, drinking coffee again. The sun rose behind the gate. Across the street, Karen stood in her yard, arms folded, watching him. But this time Jocks didn't look away, because now he knew. She wasn't just trying to get rid of his truck. She was trying to get rid of him. Jocks didn't sleep much that night, not because of the notices or the veiled threats, but because something about the way Karen operated didn't sit right. She wasn't just pushing HOA rules, she was enforcing them like she owned the land. And the gate. The gate had become her kingdom wall. The morning started the same way. Fresh coffee, early sunlight creeping through the blinds, and another fine slipped under his front mat. This one cited neighbor discomfort due to vehicle height. Number, names, no dates. Just discomfort. JAX didn't bother reading the rest. Instead, he plugged in a USB stick and checked the footage from the tiny camera he'd installed on Liberty Beast. The quality wasn't perfect, but he caught enough. Sometime after midnight, 2 figures had approached the truck. One was short, moved fast. The other stood further back, watching. The short one crept up to the cab, circled the tires, and appeared to take photos. Then something metallic flipped. Tool, maybe a wrench. The person knelt by the axle, fiddled for a few seconds, then darted off. Jocks paused the video and zoomed in. The frame froze on a shadowy outline, ball cap, gloves, and what looked like a utility vest. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. Someone was tampering with his truck. Later that afternoon, he headed over to Sarah Liu's house. Her toddler was playing on the lawn with a bubble gun, and Sarah looked surprised but not unfriendly. I need to ask you something, Jocks said. Do you ever see anyone hanging around my place at night? She hesitated. Not directly, but there's a lot Karen doesn't want people noticing. She's got cameras up near the gate, extra ones hidden. Security cameras, unofficial, she said. She claims they're for monitoring deliveries, but I found one aimed straight at our backyard. Sarah took him around the back of her property. Near the wooden fence, half tucked behind a trellis of ivy, was a small black dome. A red light blinked faintly from inside. JAX crouched and studied it. Definitely a camera. New, possibly motion. After she said someone let their dog near her rose bushes, he followed her back inside and made a note of the camera angle. If it faced the gates, and Karen had access to the footage, she likely had more information about what happened to Liberty Beast than she let on. The next day, Jocks made a stop at the county planning office. He asked for permits tied to Cedar Pines, especially anything involving the installation of electronic gates or surveillance. After a long wait and a few raised eyebrows from the staff, a clerk handed him a folder. You'll want to look at these, the man said. Lot of inconsistencies. Back home, Jocks spread the documents across his kitchen table. There were missing signatures, backdated forms, and most curiously, no record of any competitive bids. For the gates installation, the contractor listed Whitmore Access Solutions. Registered to Darren Whitmore Corin's ex-brother-in-law. He chuckled, shaking his head. So that's how you built the castle. The following Saturday, HOA hosted a neighborhood breakfast near the community fountain. Jocks showed up late, wore his oldest boots, and brought fresh copies of the permit documents in a folder. Karen was already addressing the small crowd about upcoming landscaping rules. The air was thick with polite nods and lukewarm coffee. Jocks waited until she paused. Question, he said. loud enough to turn heads. Did the HOA ever vote on hiring Whitmore Access? Karen froze, the microphone still in her hand. Jocks held up a printout of the contractor form. Because according to the county, this gate was pushed through with 1 signature and 0 reviews. Karen's face stiffened. This isn't the time or place for. It's exactly the time. And this is the place. You used HOA money to build a monument to yourself, and you hid cameras to keep it safe? A few neighbors murmured. Sarah stepped forward. He's telling the truth. There's a camera pointed at our home. We didn't approve it. Karen dropped the mic onto the folding table. This is a smear campaign. But it was too late. Jax turned and walked off without another word. By the time he got home, Liberty Beast had been keyed down the passenger side. Deep, deliberate. Fresh. Jax didn't call the police. He just went into the garage and pulled out something he hadn't used in years, a steel front plow attachment from his off-road days. He ran his hand across it slowly, like it was an old friend, because the message was clear now. The gate wasn't going to move itself. Sunday morning came without a fine on the porch. That, in itself, was suspicious. Jocks stood in the driveway sipping black coffee, 1 foot resting on Liberty Beast's step bar. A faint scratch still ran down the passenger side like a scar, but he'd left it untouched proof. It whispered a story the HOA didn't want told. Across the street, a different energy hung in the air. Some neighbors who'd never said a word now gave hesitant nods. One even offered a morning as she walked her poodle past. Karen's grip, while still tight, was starting to slip. He went into the garage and wheeled out a toolbox that hadn't seen daylight in a decade. 1 by 1, he began assembling the steel plow. The bolts still fit. The plates still gleamed under dust. This wasn't a weapon, it was leverage. He didn't plan to use it, not yet. Instead, he focused on strategy. That afternoon, Jocks stopped by Sarah Lou's house with 2 cups of lemonade. She answered the door mid-diaper change but waved him in, like they were old friends. I've been thinking, he said, setting the drinks on the counter. You ever consider running for the HOA board? Sarah laughed, short and nervous. You think they'd let me? Karen's not royalty. She's just loud. If you step up, people will follow. Sarah shook her head. They're scared of the fines. She knows everyone's trash day habits. Then we flip the game, he said. We make them care about something bigger. He laid out his plan. It wasn't revenge. It was exposure. They'd call a neighborhood meeting outside the HOA's jurisdiction. No clubhouse, no rules, just people talking, sharing. He'd supply the food. Liberty Beast would bring the attention. 2 days later, flyers started appearing in mailboxes. No names, no politics. Just a simple message. Community cookout this Saturday. Bring your voice. Bring your story. Karen caught wind fast. By Wednesday, she was pacing the sidewalk near the mailbox kiosk, intercepting conversations and warning about unauthorized assemblies. Jocks, meanwhile, took things further. He started helping neighbors not with words, but with action. An elderly couple who'd had their car trapped by the faulty gate, Jocks towed it around with Liberty Beast and parked it right beside their porch. A family that couldn't get groceries in due to broken codes. Jocks rolled up, tailgate down, helped unload everything. He didn't talk politics. He didn't mention fines, he just showed up. Over and over, and the neighborhood noticed. By Saturday, folding chairs filled the cul-de-sac outside Jocks' house. Kids ran circles around Liberty Beast while hot dogs sizzled on grills. Sarah stood near the front, with a clipboard not with rules, but with suggestions. Karen didn't show, but her husband did. He parked halfway down the block, arms crossed, watching like he'd been sent to report back. Jocks didn't acknowledge, and instead he stepped up on Liberty Beast's front bumper and called out over the hum of conversation. Folks, I didn't come here to start trouble. I came to retire. But when rules are used like weapons, people stop speaking up. He let that hang for a beat. This isn't about trucks, or lawns, or paint colors. It's about living in peace. Together, the applause wasn't loud, but it was real. Later that night, Sarah handed him a clipboard with 36 to request a formal audit of board decisions and financial activity. More than enough to call for a special election. Jocks nodded. That's a start. But just as things felt like they were turning, the night delivered one more twist. He awoke to the sound of grinding metal. Liberty Beast's alarm didn't go off, but something had triggered the camera. He raced outside barefoot. What he saw nearly made him laugh out loud. Karen had installed 2 thick concrete bollards in front of the gate entrance, painted gray. Fresh cement, still drying. No warning, no notice. They stood just far enough apart for a compact car to squeeze through, but Liberty Beast, not a chance. He walked up to them, touched the cement, still warm. Back inside. He pulled out his phone, opened the footage, and let it play. It was grainy, but clear enough. Karen, in a hoodie, supervising 2 men pouring cement at night. Work lights, no vests. He sent a copy to his lawyer and smiled. She'd just crossed the line from overreach into obstruction. Now it wasn't just about HOA drama, now it was legal. The concrete pillars dried fast, but the neighborhood's patience was cracking even faster. It started with a phone call from a man named Frank Weaver, a longtime board member who'd never once spoken to Jocks. He left a voicemail that was short, gravelly, and uneasy. "We need to talk." And not on HOA lines. They met at a park just outside the neighborhood neutral ground. Jocks arrived early. Frank came in wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap like he was avoiding paparazzi. "I can't be seen with you," Frank said, "but people are tired. She's pushing it too far." Jocks didn't press. He just nodded. "She's been rerouting votes," Frank added. "Board members who disagree with her get cut out of meetings. She claims they were rescheduled or private. Half the stuff passed in the last year. We never saw it." Jocks leaned back, and the gate.
No.
Legal review. She called it a security emergency after one kid broke a window last summer. That was enough for her to bypass a vote. Jocks had what he needed. The cracks weren't just in the cement, they were in the structure holding it all up. Back home, he put together a small binder. Every violation notice, every camera angle, every late-night cement pour. Alongside that, he included a photo of the mailbox sign-up sheet with names and dates. The documentation was airtight. The next day, Sarah filed the paperwork for a special election to replace 3 board seats including Karen's. By law, it triggered a 14-day notice period. Flyers had to be distributed. Residents needed to be notified. Karen couldn't block it, not legally. That evening, Karen called for an emergency board meeting in the clubhouse. But when Jocks showed up with Sarah and 2 other neighbors, the doors were locked. The sign read, "Meeting postponed indefinitely due to safety concerns." Jocks didn't knock. He just took a photo of the sign and walked away. Within 48 hours, neighbors began sharing their own stories. One man had been fined for a garden hose left out for more than 12 minutes, another for leaving their garage open too long during daylight. Several had been cited for unapproved porch furniture. Karen had created a culture of fear and micromanagement, and now it was unraveling. Jocks used the momentum to plan a second neighborhood event, Liberty Day, a block party open to every resident, with no HOA oversight. He pulled the necessary event permit from the county himself, bypassing Karen's usual stranglehold. Flyers were printed and posted everywhere, on trees, at mailboxes, in dog parks. Word spread fast. Even neighbors who'd kept their heads down were now whispering about the upcoming vote. Karen, of course, responded. She filed a formal complaint against Jocks with the city code office, claiming he was operating an unlicensed event venue. When the inspector arrived, he took one look at the fire pit and folding tables and said, "This your personal driveway?" Jocks nodded. "Enjoy your cookout," the man said. On the day of Liberty Day, people arrived in waves. Children ran around with face paint. A bounce house towered in one front yard. Liberty Beast was parked front and center, proudly displaying the massive new banner across its side, "We deserve better." There was no speech this time. No podium. Just neighbors. Eating, talking, laughing. Even Frank came by wearing the same cap, but this time, he stayed. Around sunset, Karen drove past slowly in her Lexus, sunglasses on, jaw set. She didn't stop, but everyone saw her. Jocks watched her taillights disappear behind the same concrete bollards she'd built, and right then, he realized something. She wasn't fighting to keep control. She was trying not to lose everything, but she wasn't done yet. Later that night, as the party wrapped and folding chairs were being stacked, Jocks got a knock at the door. It wasn't a neighbor, it was a man in a black polo, holding a clipboard and a badge from the county inspector's office. "I need to speak with you about some recent vehicle activity involving drainage access. There's been a complaint filed regarding unauthorized terrain use behind HOA boundaries." Jocks's stomach sank. She was digging deeper now, not just with fines, but with agencies. And she'd just made things personal again. The inspector stood in Jocks's driveway like he expected an argument, but Jocks didn't give him one. "Sure," Jocks said calmly. "Let's walk it." They went behind the property where the access easement curved along the creek. The dirt trail was wide, mostly unused, but officially public land for drainage and maintenance. "This is where you drove?" the inspector asked, pointing to a set of massive tire prints. "That's correct," Jocks replied. "I checked with the county's public easement maps. No restrictions on traversal." The man flipped through his clipboard. "Someone said you were operating construction-grade vehicles off-road without permission. That someone have a name?" The inspector didn't answer. "We'll close the complaint unless something's actually damaged." As the man left, Jocks could almost hear Karen seething from wherever she was watching. Every move he made, she tried to twist into a violation, but she was running out of angles. He wasn't just keeping receipts anymore, he was curating a museum. Later that evening, he walked the length of the front gate recording video of every detail. The new concrete bollards, the improper width, the lack of reflective paint, the way emergency vehicles would never make it through. Then he emailed the footage to the county fire marshal's office. The next morning, they called him back. "You're right," the marshal said. "That gate violates fire code. You got that bollard installation on video?" "I do. We'll be investigating." Karen had finally laid her own trap hand, stepped straight into it, but Jocks wasn't finished. That weekend, he hosted a small workshop in his garage. He called it Know Your Rights Day. Sarah helped him print flyers, and 3 neighbors brought coffee and donuts. People showed up with armfuls of fines, angry letters, and ridiculous violation photos. One had been cited for using the wrong shade of mulch. By the end of the day, they'd documented 15 separate instances of board overreach tied back to Karen. Misused funds, improper voting, bylaw amendments slipped into newsletters disguised as gardening tips. JAX organized it all into a single PDF, titled it The Whitmore Dossier, and shared it with the Special Election Committee. Karen Mustoff sensed the pressure, because Monday morning brought her boldest move yet. 2 new cement planters were placed on either side of the bollards, massive, immovable, filled with dirt and fresh marigolds. On the front of each was a gold plaque reading, "Beautification provided by the Cedar Pines Board." Now, even compact cars struggled to get through. One neighbor scraped their bumper trying to exit. Enough was enough. Jocks rolled Liberty Beast out from the garage at sunrise. Neighbors stopped in their tracks. The truck rumbled down the street like a coming storm, exhaust low and steady. He turned toward the gate, paused in front of the blockade, and stepped out. He wasn't going to ram it, not yet. Instead, he pulled a folding chair from the bed, set it down facing the bollards, and sat. A single sign hung from the front bumper: "Obstruction isn't leadership." He sat there for 6 straight hours. By midday, half the neighborhood had driven by. Some waved, some brought him sandwiches, a few parked and joined him. Karen finally appeared near sunset. Her Lexus rolled up beside the bollards, windows up. She stared through the glass. Jocks didn't move. Neither did she. Eventually, she backed away. The next morning, county engineers arrived. They measured, took notes, took photos, then marked the gate, the bollards, and the planters with orange tape. One of them knocked on Jocks' door. "We filed a notice. That gate's coming down." Jocks nodded once. "Appreciate it." But the surprise wasn't the gate order. It was what came that evening. A notice posted to every door in Cedar Pines, issued by the HOA legal department, effective immediately. Karen Whitmore had been placed on temporary leave pending a formal investigation. The notice didn't say who pushed for it, but Jocks didn't need to ask. He already knew the cracks he'd opened had finally turned into a fault line. But the war wasn't over, because sometimes the most dangerous person isn't the one who enforces the rules. It's the one who wrote them. The neighborhood should have breathed easier once the notice went out. Karen had been officially suspended from the HOA board, pending review. The gate was flagged for removal. Residents were starting to joke again at the mailbox. For the first time since Jocks moved in, Cedar Pines felt less like a gated fortress and more like a neighborhood. But then the black SUV showed up. It parked 2 houses down from Jocks' same car, same spot every night. At first he thought it was a visitor, but it never moved, never left. The windows were tinted darker than legal, and the engine ran at idle, hour after hour. Sarah noticed it too. "That's not a neighbor's car," she said. "You think she hired someone?" Jocks didn't answer. He already knew. Karen had been removed, yes, but not erased. Inside her home, behind the windows where the blinds never opened, she was still working the phones, still pulling strings, still watching. The next morning, Liberty Beast had a new addition: a bright orange parking boot clamped around the front left tire. A ticket was taped to the windshield, citing parking in excess of residential vehicle code standards. The code didn't exist. He pulled it off with a wrench in under 5 minutes and dropped it off at the county sheriff's office. "You say someone installed this without authorization?" the deputy asked. JAX handed over the footage again. Clear as day. A man in a maintenance vest, no ID, no badge, exiting the black SUV, under cover of darkness. That was enough to file a formal complaint. But it wasn't enough to stop Karen. The following day, the HOA inbox was flooded with anonymous emails, claims that Jocks was harassing residents, that his truck posed a safety threat, that he invited media without community consent. Word spread that Karen was pressuring the legal team to reinstate her. Meanwhile, the special election date approached fast. Flyers had been distributed, ballots prepped. Jocks had officially backed Sarah for the board alongside 2 other neighbors ready to replace Karen's loyalists. Karen, of course, submitted her name for re-election the day before the deadline. That same afternoon, a letter arrived in Jocks' mailbox, certified official envelope. Inside, a cease and desist from Karen's private attorney, accusing him of defamation, character destruction, and inciting unrest. Jocks didn't respond. He sent the letter to the same fire marshal's office investigating the gate, copied the HOA legal team. Then he got to work on his final move. He took every file, photo timestamp, and witness statement he'd collected over the past month and assembled it into a single document, a comprehensive itemized audit of Karen Whitmore's board presidency. Then he recorded a video. Simple backdrop. .com voice. "I didn't come here to start a war," he said, looking into the camera. "But some people build walls just to feel powerful. Cedar Pines was never supposed to be a castle. It was supposed to be a community. This isn't about one person. It's about all of us." He posted the video to the neighborhood forum, emailed it to every resident, and uploaded the audit to a public folder for anyone to read. Within hours, the forum lit up. Long silent homeowners began sharing their own stories. One woman said, "Karen, find her for planting daisies." Another claimed she'd been threatened with foreclosure over mailbox paint. The tide had turned and, this time, it wasn't quiet. On Election Day, turnout broke every record in Cedar Pines history. Folding tables lined the clubhouse walls. Ballots poured in. Neighbors stood in line just to have their voices counted. Karen arrived in a pressed blazer, lips tight, sunglasses on. She didn't speak to anyone, just hovered near the ballot box, eyes scanning the crowd. When the results were announced that evening, it wasn't even close. Sarah and her team won in a landslide. Karen's name was near the bottom. She didn't stay for congratulations. She left without a word, walking past jocks with her head high but her shoulders heavy. The next morning, Liberty Beast stood at the gate as crews arrived with jackhammers and trucks. The concrete bollards came down first, the arch next. And by noon, the gate that had guarded Karen's illusion of power was reduced to twisted metal and caution tape. Jocks stood back and watched, not gloating, just steady. Some fights are loud, some are quiet, but the ones that last, those are built on truth. By the end of the week, the gate was gone. In its place sat a small patch of fresh gravel, tire tracks carved through it like scars, finally healing. No one missed the metal arch, no one missed the concrete pillars, and certainly, no one missed the signs Karen had once posted with bold font and sharper warnings. The silence felt different now, peaceful, not tense. Jax stood outside Liberty Beast that morning, sipping his usual coffee as the sun rose through the oaks. No envelopes on his windshield, no SUVs parked with tinted windows, no more cameras hidden in ivy, just birds, wind, and the low hum of a neighborhood getting back to itself. Sarah had officially taken over as board president. The first meeting under the new leadership lasted 20 minutes, ended with applause, and for the first time in a long while, someone brought cookies. Karen's name wasn't mentioned once, until she made sure it was. That Thursday, a moving truck rolled up to her house. Plain white, no labels. 3 workers carried boxers out as Karen stood nearby with her arms folded, barking quiet instructions into a phone. The house didn't sell, it transferred ownership. Her sister, according to neighbors. Rumors said Karen had accepted a buyout from the HOA legal team to step down and disappear. Clean exit, no lawsuits, no more cameras. Jax didn't go over, but as the truck pulled away, she glanced across the street one last time. He nodded once. She didn't return it, and just like that, she was gone. What came next surprised everyone. With the gate gone, the neighborhood started hosting monthly open street evenings, food trucks, music, and a rotating showcase of local talent. Sarah renamed it Cedar Pines Unplugged. Kids chalked up the sidewalks, teens sold lemonade, and Liberty Beast became a photo booth on wheels. Then one day, a man with a camera crew knocked on Jox's door. He was with a TV network. One of the producers had come across the audit Jox uploaded on the footage of the concrete showdown. It had picked up steam online. "I've got a show," the producer said. "A docu-series, People versus Power. We'd like to feature you." Jox almost said no, but then he remembered that first day, when he rolled into the neighborhood and Karen tried to tell him where he didn't belong. And now he had the proof that sometimes being too quiet is the real problem. The crew filmed for 3 days interviews, footage of the gate ruins, drone shots of Liberty Beast cruising down the main road. When the episode aired 3 months later, it opened with Karen's concrete pillars cracking under a jackhammer. Then cut to Jox, standing beside his truck with crossed arms and a calm voice. "I didn't do this to win. I did this because nobody else wanted to fight." The episode went viral. Even residents from other neighborhoods started emailing Sarah, asking how to reclaim their HOAs. Then came the parade. The town's annual spring fair had always included a procession of floats and bands, but this year, Cedar Pines signed up with something different. Liberty Beast rolled down Main Street draped in streamers, an inflatable arch in the truck bed reading "Freedom Rolls On." Kids threw candy from the windows. Sarah waved beside a new sign that read, "HOA, happier, open, accountable." The crowd roared when Liberty Beast stopped at the intersection, revved twice, and then slowly crushed a cardboard replica of the old gate under its tires. Symbolic, clean, loud enough to leave a message. That night, Jox got a message himself. Typed, no envelope, just a note under a rock on his porch. "You win this round. Some fences don't stay down forever." He read it once, then tossed it in the fire pit out back, because this wasn't a game, that it was a reminder that when someone draws a line, someone else will always be brave enough to cross it, and sometimes, it takes a monster truck to lead the way.